Is Denzel Washington trying to tell us something? What you're about to hear is a middle road on race and culture in film industry that I don't think anyone could have explained as well as him. Drawing from his 2016 film Fences, Denzel Washington gave a perfect synopsis for why it's culture that can impact a movie's direction and not race. Take a look at this.
So why did he need a black director? Could a white director not have?
It's not color, it's culture.
Explain the difference, because I think we're
Steven
in a space
Spielberg
right
did Schindler's List. Martin Scorsese did Goodfellas, right? Steven Spielberg could direct Goodfellas. Martin Scorsese probably could have done a good job with Schindler's List, but they're cultural differences. You know, I know, you know, we all know what it is when a hot comb hits your hair on a Sunday morning, what it smells like. That's a cultural difference, not just a color difference. So it's the culture.
You know why I think it's so refreshing to hear that? The fact is that over the last few years, ever since the element of race in movies and casting started to become a hot button cultural issue, we have seen the left and right on the topic box themselves into either seeing that element of race everywhere or completely refusing that it plays any part at all. That's where Denzel Washington's assertion of cultural familiarity as a far more important factor in a movie like Fences drives a wedge between those two political sides and creates a middle road that no one seemed to think of before. And honestly, it's a vital distinction that only someone like Denzel Washington himself could get away with saying, because anyone else would be unwillingly, but unfortunately saddled by their own racial identity if they differentiated race and culture like this. Perhaps someone like Ben Shapiro, who's made a similar distinction before, is a good example of this.
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture.
Speaking of Ben Shapiro, he's also spoken extensively about something else, which is the importance of financial responsibility. And in a world that looks as fragile and volatile as ever, time-tested stable assets like gold are your safest bet. That's where Birch Gold comes in, helping people like you make the transition and diversify their assets and retirement portfolio that thousands of Americans can vouch for. Click that link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen to learn more. Being in tune with the culture of the characters you're representing on screen gives you an edge over someone that doesn't have the same degree of familiarity. I think we saw just how impactful that can be in this example next.
There are things that would never be seen on television if you didn't do them. You know, it was empowering to see myself, you know, for the first time. This is what I was getting at with August Wilson, demanding that there be a black director telling our stories. How important is that?
So we had a Q&A, I forgot where we were, one of the screenings. The guy got up and said, I didn't know August Wilson was Polish. And people laughed, but the point was, he said, that's my family up there. That's the brilliance of August Wilson. That's why I say the universal stem. Yes, this is specifically an African-American family, but this ain't no black movie.
Right.
You feel me?
Fences is not.
No.
It's just a great movie.
There was one scene from that series, How to Get Away with Murder, that perfectly embodied what happens when you have on board directors and actors that are in tune with the characters they're playing. In one incredible scene, you see Viola Davis's character stare herself in the mirror with makeup and extensions that betrayed how she really wanted to look and putting up a fake front for people. It's in that scene where she has a moment of both rebellion and vulnerability, wiping off her makeup, pulling away her wig and extensions, and unapologetically going against the beauty standards of the time. There's also a relaxation of the posture and facial expressions that portrays a degree of authenticity and taking off a mask. Those emotions and the entire background and history that led up to them are very hard to replicate and reproduce on screen, unless you're working with an actor or director that is intimately familiar with it. A film being a creative product can seldom work well when it tries to do everything right in a cold algorithmic manner. Instead, there needs to be a flare of emotion and empathy driving it. It needs to understand not just of the world and characters they're portraying, but also the people and culture that correspond to them in real life. And guess what? In a scene as timeless as the one with Viola Davis, it turns out that she was the one who actually asked for it to be put in just because of how big of an impact she knew it would create with the audience.
You know, in How to Get Away with Murder, the only reason why you're seeing that is because I demanded that.
Did you?
I demanded the weave scene. I demanded the taking off the makeup,
Right.
because as an artist, you always have to ask the reason why a character is the way they are. And a lot of times what happens when you get a role, people are more into image and message and not execution. Especially us. We just want to always see the images that are going to uplift us, uphold us, make us look good, make us look strong,
Right.
but not make us messy, flawed, joyful, beautifully human.
That's such a beautiful way to put it. Perhaps another example is a movie like Moonlight, directed by Barry Jenkins. You see a raw authenticity in the story of a young queer black man navigating the complex maze of both his external and internal world. That's where a director like Barry was able to introduce a level of empathy that not many other people could. And it comes from understanding Black America with all the beautiful intricacies of its culture. That's why when someone like Denzel Washington makes the same point for Fences, he's best placed to make the point that race and culture are not the same thing. Talking about one when you're really meaning the other ends in diluting language to the point that it starts to divide people on the basis of race, rather than rejoicing in the differences of our culture. Color is only skin deep, but culture carries with it centuries worth of tradition passed down through generations and shared among millions of people that add and beautify it every single day. Being inside of that cultural melting pot gives you a perspective that no one outside can have. And when that's brought onto a movie set and on the big screen, you get a piece of art that truly resonates and speaks to the audience like nothing else. Here's Denzel driving home this difference in a larger context, cautioning people not to conflate or confuse the terms to their detriment.
Here's the thing you got to remember when you talk about racial and you talk about discrimination. Maybe, what if he just wasn't good enough? See, it's so easy to just say, oh, it's because of this. It's because of racism. Oh, I didn't get the job because of that. Maybe you weren't good enough. One might use the word anger. Someone might use the word opportunity. You know, what are you going to do with it is the point. We all have reasons, or we might feel righteous reasons to be angry. But the point is, what are you going to do about it?
It's hard to disagree, because the moment race is made the centerpiece of the conversation, whether public or personal, is when you go down a path of aggravating race relations in the country rather than helping them. Understanding that there's a plethora of other factors that contribute to success, failure, art, creativity, history, justice, and personal experience is the first step to realizing how shallow the race discussion really is. Denzel Washington, being in the business for nearly 5 decades, has seen America and the film industry make one of the most important transformations as it regards race and inclusivity. Understanding this shift and the many great directors and films that have resulted in it clearly gives him a perspective that few others have. That not only means a greater appreciation for the medium of movies, but also for telling stories that are authentic to Black America and do justice to their culture, separating the conversation from race and speaking about the importance of culture takes that storytelling away from a surface level understanding to a very different and nuanced film arc, and it results in iconic scenes that outlive every person, film, and racial division that we encounter in the world today.